Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Heir's Lair. I'm your host, Jonathan Taylor. Today I'm doing something new to my channel, something I've been wanting to do actually for a while, namely an interview. And for this interview, I've brought, okay, I haven't actually brought her, rather I've invited her, and she decided to come along. Uh, would you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Erika McCorkle. I'm also known as Kira of the Wind on most social media sites. So you might know me as Erika or Kira. I go by both, and I am a an author, and my debut novel is coming out pretty soon, or it will be out by the time this video comes out.
Okay. Before I go into more of the questions, I have to say we will likely touch upon a lot of things, a lot of topics. Nothing that YouTube's terms of service won't allow, but still, uh, it might get a little bit messy from that particular perspective. So, is there anything you don't want to talk about, either in general or pertaining to your book?
Um, Not at all. I'm fine. I will talk about absolutely anything.
Okay, good to know. Now, uh, you said it. You say that you have a book coming out, and actually it will be out by the time this video gets out. I I even pre-ordered a copy. What I
Oh,
want,
well, thank you.
you're welcome. What I wanted to know, is there a reason behind the release order? I've checked out your website, and you say that these books can be read in any order the reader chooses, as soon as they will be out. So, is there a reason why you decided to release Merchants of Knowledge and Magic first?
Not really. It was the one that first came to mind for me, because I wanted to write a book that would introduce the reader to my world, and I wanted to write a novel where the main character travels around, sees different places, meets different people. The other two books are more contained in a smaller area, so the only reason I went with Mocam first was for the diversity experience, more or less.
Okay, this is actually where I feel the need to intervene. OCAM is the abbreviation of the book, and Kira mainly refers to her books by their abbreviations. Would you like to discuss your other ones, if briefly?
Yeah, so MoCam, that's Merchants of Knowledge and Magic. MoLab is the second one. I'm currently writing it, and it stands for Merchants of Light and Bone. And my third one, which I will start probably in a few months, that one is MODA, and that stands for Merchants of Dance and Hedonism.
Mm-hmm. Okay, noted. Next question. Aside from the naming convention, is there anything uniting your books? Do you have common themes or common characters that show up in all of them?
Y- yeah, they all take place in the same world and at the same time. They take place in the year 561. That's my world's time period. It doesn't correlate to the year 561 on Earth or anything like that. Um, Characters are they make cameo appearances. Like in Mocam, there's a character named Requiem, and in Molab, there's a character named Teenan, and those two are the main characters in the third book, which is Moda. So you'll see characters making appearances throughout all the books.
Okay. The next the next question. This debut novel of yours, is this also does this also mark your writing debut, or do you have other published work or other work in general out there in the world?
It's my first published work, yeah. I wrote a few short stories, but they weren't published. I wrote one called The Rainbow Dagger that I intended to submit to an anthology, but that anthology was canceled. So I just have this short story that's just kind of floating around, and I'll probably publish it eventually someday in another anthology. But for right now, it's just out in the ether.
Is the Rainbow Dagger also part of the Pentagonal Dominion series of worlds that the Merchants trilogy is based in?
Yes, it is. It takes place about 200 years before the Merchant novels. It is about a god blood and a demigod, so it's not even in the mortal world. It takes place in the afterlife, but it is the same universe, same gods, same lore, same history.
Okay. Would you like to explain the terms God, Blood, and Demigod?
Yeah, so in my world, you can become a magical entity through two different ways. Either you're born with it, and if you're born with it, it's because your parent is a god, or your grandparent, or your great grandparent. It goes for 3 generations. So god bloods are the descendants of gods, and demigods are people who drank the blood of a god, usually with the god's permission, because let's be honest, it's pretty hard to force the blood out of a god. Um, and in this case, in the Rainbow Dagger, both the main characters are a deaf godblood and a deaf demigod. And in the Pentagonal Dominion, the god of death, Sawyer, will, I won't say hire, but like he'll take a bunch of people and give them his blood so that they can serve him. They go around to the mortal worlds and collect the souls of deceased people and bring them to the afterlife, and those are his demigods.
Would it be correct to say instead of hired that Sawyer commissions them to bring people to the afterlife?
It's one way to think of it. He employs them in some manner. They're, I sometimes call them his servants. But there's not really money in the afterlife. They just do it because it's how their society is.
Okay. Now, I think as the as some of the viewers and listeners have been able to figure out by now, there actually is a lot of conceptual depth to your world, and also visiting your website just even for just a, a bit of time, you realize just how absolutely massive in scope the world actually is. I um, so I kind of have to know what inspired you to create the Pentagonal Dominion.
Well, it's a long story. It started basically as a Pokemon fanfic, in all honesty. I was pretty young. I had just gotten into Pokemon, and I started drawing creatures, monsters, saying, "Oh, this is like my own Pokemon," you know. And then I drew a map. It's like, okay, this is the world that these people are gonna live in. And then I created like the legendary Pokemon, and those became gods over time. And it's grew and grew and grew. So inspiration came from everywhere.
Okay. I've noticed that your gods have some pretty unique peculiarities, or as in, or it's when there people can also become gods. They aren't just one and done. Once you're a god, you're a god forever, and no one else can and no one else can become that unless unless the others will it. So how would you, or am I describing correctly, or how else would you call it?
Well, there are gods, which you become a god by holding a core. Well, one of the elemental cores, there's 16 of them, and you die while holding it, then you will become a god, and nobody can take that away from you. Your body will start producing the magic subatomic particles that um, performs magic in this setting. Now, a god blood is a god's descendant, and they can have their magic removed basically through a kind of like phlebotomy. It's a process by which the magic blood in their body is removed and regular blood is put back in to keep them alive. Um, and then demigods, they drink a god's blood, but if they don't drink it after a while, and if they don't use their powers, they will just lose it eventually. Like it just kind of fades from their body. Um, so a godblood and a demigod can lose their powers over time, but a god cannot.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I have a lot more questions about the plot mechanics, of course, but I assume the book will the book or either this first book or the subsequent books will answer a lot of them. So I'll skip over that. And
Okay.
curious as I might be about that. You mentioned that this started as that your story started as Pokemon fanfic. Did you did you get into any discussions surrounding your local Pokemon community or about the Pokemon fandom in general after that?
Not really. I was young. I was a child. At the time, we were just kids on the school playground playing Pokemon, like the video game, and trading Pokemon cards. There wasn't really, not, I couldn't really like reach out to a bigger community about that.
Hmm. Did any of you play play the card game by the actual rules on the cards, or did you always have house rules?
A little bit of both. We mostly played by the rules on the cards, but I think there were a few rules that we didn't really care for. I remember the energy system we didn't care for a lot. I think we would make it so like as long as you just had like one or two energy, you could use even like your four energy powers or whatever. I didn't play a whole lot though, so mostly I just collected them.
Yeah. This runs kind of contrary to the current way you set up your magic system. If I recall correctly, would you like to discuss that a little bit?
My the magic system in my novels.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have an element system which was inspired by Pokemon, but I use my own system of elements that I thought up. And so hard to explain.
Take your time.
So
It's
for
fine.
to use magic, a person needs 10% of their blood to be elementally infused. Like 10% of the blood, like basically they're red blood cells, except they're not red, they're clear. Has to have an elementron in it, and that's the subatomic particle that I invented for my setting. For every 10% of your blood, which is magical, you can use one power. That's like one ability in the element of like whatever element you have. So if you're 10% water elemental, you can use one water ability. Um, if you have 20% blood, water elemental blood, you can use two abilities. Um, and each element has eight, so at 80%, you're basically a god. Anything beyond that is just excess. Um, Now, if you are an a magical being, like if you have elemental blood, you can control your blood flow.
Oh.
So, like you just sitting down, you might have some of your elemental blood might be in your feet, some of it might be in your torso, some of it might be in your arms. But to use magic, you'll have to get um, a decent percentage of it, like in your fingers, for example. They can make it so that all their elemental blood goes into their fingers. That of course runs various health risks. Some people can get strokes or ischemia or other issues in that regard. So they have to be careful, and they try not to use magic a lot. And if they do use it, it's just very quick. So it goes to their hand, they use their magic, and then they let their blood flow as normal.
I can tell a lot of your scientific background went into that. Are there any other aspects of your world or of the aspects or of the aspects pertaining to its creation that where you showcase your expertise in a similar way?
Yeah, so even though I said these magic particles are in the blood, they can also be in other atoms. They bind to metal, um, and so sometimes some people, enchanters, and this is what Zakuro is in my first novels. He's an enchanter. They can make elementrons go into metal objects, and then that metal object is enchanted, and it depends on what magic was put into it. Like she's also an illusionist, so she can put mind elementrons into a metal ring and make it so that, like, when you wear the ring, for example, you will be invisible. And um, in this case, it's based on the periodic table, which atoms can be enchanted. It's atoms that are. I'd have to check my notes. I can never remember the exact number. I think it's over 25 neutrons and over 1.8 electronegativity.
Okay.
I keep a chart handy because I never remember the exact numbers.
Yeah. That's all right. Uh, you now, as I've said before, your world is pretty large, and you also have a lot of characters in it. Do you use any references uh, or any inspirations when it comes to designing either the characters or various, let's say, societies within your world?
Yeah, I draw inspiration from everywhere. I have played a lot of video games, watched a lot of anime in my lifetime, and I'm often inspired by characters and monster designs I see there. Even though I said it started as a Pokemon fanfic, I've drawn inspiration from every anime and video game that I've experienced in the last 20 years. Um, as for the societies, I will occasionally draw upon real life societies for inspiration. Um, there's some Japanese, Finnish, Indian, just various influences. I do my best to be respectful. I don't do stereotypes. At least I try not to. I'm sure my readers will let me know if I did anything wrong there.
We'll talk about the readers soon enough. Before I get into that, this might actually be connected to that. Are there any deleted scenes connected to your debut, or rather snippets or entire parts of your story that you wanted to include but couldn't, or decided against it for whatever reason? And what do they consist of?
Um, I didn't really know what I was doing with a certain character to begin with. The character named Pivy. I initially was gonna have her be just part of the group, like she was gonna travel with Kalinfe and Zukuro the entire time. But after writing about 11 chapters, I didn't know what I wanted to do with her, and I felt like she would just kind of be in the way. So I decided to just not have her be in some of the future scenes and just focus on Kalinfe and Zukuro instead. And I think the book is way better that way. Like, if I had continued writing her as I had intended, she would have just felt shoehorned in. Like, I would have had to come up with dialogue for her that really didn't belong. So it's deleted, but it's also better.
Okay. The next question is kind of the flip side of that. Do you have any extra scenes, so to speak? So, anything that you didn't include in the initial concept of the story, but then you decided, no, it makes sense if this thing is in the story, or including it would make the story better.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, what are some examples offhand? I feel like I I initially I wanted my book to be 120,000 words because that was kind of what publishers were looking for. So I kept it at 120, but then I wasn't happy with it. I was like, I don't care about traditional publishing anymore. I'm going to publish this on my own if I have to. So I went back and I added just what felt right at the time. And that included scenes that I'd wanted to include the first time through, but I was like, no, I gotta keep this short, and I can't be adding all this extra detail. One scene that I'm glad that I was able to add is a scene where Kalinfe is in Williford's library. Initially, I wasn't able to include that because it was just a dialogue scene, but I really wanted it because it shows like where Williford keeps his secrets, just kind of how the magic um, of his whole secret currency system works. So I was happy I was able to include that.
Okay. uh, I actually had another question that I wanted to slot in here, but given you already mentioned the topic, we'll just go further along with it. Uh, you was your initial intention always to go through a publisher and do the traditional publishing route, or did you decide upon that eventually?
Basically, I didn't know what I wanted to do because I didn't know what the other options were. I grew up thinking that traditional publishing was the only way and that self-publishing was basically for failures. Like, that was just the culture at the time. That was what was put in my head. But as I got more involved in the writing community and as I learned more about traditional publishing, I came to realize how toxic it was, and also that indie publishers are pretty great. And even if you indie publish or self publish, that doesn't mean that you're not going to sell books. It doesn't make you a failure. So I decided that I needed what was best. I realized that what was best for my books would be to indie or self publish. Because with trad publishing, one of the problems is that like you sell like one book at a time basically. Like if I sold MoCam to them, there's no guarantee that they're gonna want MoLab or MoDA or any other books in the Pentagonal Dominion. But I wanted to write the same, all these books in this world, and I wanted to publish them all. And I couldn't deal with this, um, just one at a time thing. I wanted a publisher who would take all my books. So that's what I ended up doing is I'm with an indie publisher now who basically wants all my books. So for the foreseeable future, I will be publishing with Shadow Spark Publishing.
Okay. And thank you for mentioning the topic because now I can bring out the question I initially wanted to slot in before this one. Namely, do you have any other books you want to write? You want to include in the do you have any other books that take place within the worlds of the Pentagonal Dominion that aren't the merchants books?
Yeah, I have ideas for so many books. I'm not sure which one I'm gonna write next. I've been kind of debating whether I want to write um, the. Okay, so some of my ideas. One of them will be a long epic series, probably 8 to 12 books long, about humans who end up in the Pentagonal Dominion, and that one takes place a year after the Merchants novels, and it
Okay.
is from the perspective of human characters. So I think it'll have a lot more just references to Earth. I think it'll be more relatable to readers. But I'm not very passionate about that series right now, so I might hold off on it. I also want to write a 5 book series about the Greed Wars, which happened about 300 years before the Merchant novels, and it's the kind of about how Aloshir got into a really bad capitalist hellscape scenario, and then there were revolts, and it kind of got back under control. And I'm very passionate about that one right now, so that one might be next. And eventually, I also want to write the story about how the god of the Pentagonal Dominion, Lucognatus, how he conquered it, and that would have been 561 years before the Merchant novels. So I'm very excited about that one too.
Okay. Um, Next question. Going back to publishing, were any of your pre-existing ideas about publishing proven correct or false? As you were going through the publishing process, did you find out that anything? Did you find that any of your ideas, uh, matched reality or didn't?
I mean, yeah, I thought traditional publishing was the only option, and I just had to do it, or else I was a failure. And that has proven so incorrect, and I'm very glad for it because I really don't like the idea of looking for an agent, which is just a middleman, basically, and then that agent sells your book to like an actual publisher. Like, it just does not sit well with me. I am not a fan.
Yeah, as someone who's had to make that decision himself, I know the feeling.
Yeah, yeah. I sometimes, like, I'll be on Twitter and I'll see these people so excited about getting their agent, and it's like, it doesn't mean anything. It's like, you found a middleman. Congratulations. Now, actually sell your book.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wish them luck. I'm not trying to be a hater or anything. It's just, the process is too long and too tedious and just too obnoxious for me. Like, I want to write books. I don't want to look for a middleman to do whatever and to also take part of my profits. Like, I'm very happy with the situation I'm in right now.
Okay. Uh, Next question, because I know you're doing advanced reader copies, and otherwise you're quite active in not just promoting your books, but also in building a community um, around your brand, let's say, so to speak. So not just not just not just the Pentagonal Dominion books, but generally an author community. And I want to know how has the how has the reception of your book been so far? I mean it's not out, but people are still talking about it. So what is it what was it like to see that your work is being discussed?
It's wonderful. I love it. I mean, I've been world building for so long. I have all these ideas that other people have not seen before in fantasy novels. So they see my world, they see something new and magical and just amazing. Not to toot my own horn, but that's what they say. So, and it's really exciting to me to have my work be recognized.
Hmm.
And I did just get a review earlier today from one of my ARC readers, and she was just thoroughly impressed by it, and it just made my day to see that nice review come in.
Nice. I imagine though that not everything went swimmingly. So do you have any teachable moments that you would like to share?
Um, Honestly, I feel like it's gone fairly well. Um, the biggest issue I've had recently was I tried to get a book touring company to tour my book, and they weren't very welcoming, I guess I could say. So first off, my book is kind of, niche. It has footnotes for one thing because the world building is so intense that um, if I explained every world building concept, the book would be a slog and it would be boring, and it would also just take readers right out of the story for me to explain what, a plant is every time Calinthe looks at a plant. So I use footnotes to just kind of streamline that process. And this book blogging or book tour place that I tried to get in with just did not like my footnotes. They're like, these, you can just write your book with, as everyone else does. I'm like, no, I need my footnotes, and my editors and my publisher agree that the footnotes they're all right. I mean, yeah, you can have your opinion if you don't like footnotes, that's fine, but I'm not going to take them out. But then the second thing this same company did is they looked at my cover and they're like, oh, it has a fairy on it and it's white. This is a book for children. A grandmother might look at this and think this is a book for her granddaughter or something. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, you think fairies are for children? Have you heard some of the original fairy tales? Like, I'm sorry, but if you look at the cover of my book and buy it for your grandchild, you're in for a surprise. And my book, on Amazon and wherever else you're going to buy it, it says this is a book for adults. So if someone is foolish enough to make that choice, it's kind of on them at that point.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to rant a little bit there. I got a little upset at that place.
No, it's all right. It's all right. I imagine something similar occurs to people who make R-rated movies and then bring their kids with them to see it because it's a superhero movie or some other kid-like genre, and then they
Oh
see that
yeah.
it's actually yeah.
I mean, honestly, if you're a parent and you're bringing your kid to something and you don't do the research, it's on you.
Okay. Um, Next question. How many of the people you would consider close, so family, friends, other acquaintances, etc., have know that you have a writing career or a writing endeavor you're working towards, and how have they responded to that?
Um, I don't really keep in contact with my family very well. I have my partner, he knows about it, but he's not much of a reader, so he doesn't really like comment on it, he just knows about it. Um, some of my real life friends, some of them know, some of them don't. Um, most of my social contacts are people who I met through Twitter, honestly, so they're part of a writing community, so they know about it, of course.
Okay. Next question. Has anything about the process of releasing Mocam taught you anything about how you would want to manage the next books you release differently?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna start like doing arc readers sooner if I can. It's not entirely in my control. My publisher does have some say over that and the release date, although I am gonna see if I can get some arcs earlier than before because it so far they've had like a month and I didn't even have everything ready within a month, so I'm hoping to just have more time in the future to get things ready for release.
Same. I've noticed I've had to rush a lot of things when I was working towards releasing my debut, so I know what that's like. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, okay, we're almost at the end here. Of the questions I've asked of you so far, are there any you would want me to answer?
I mean, I don't really even remember what questions you've asked. I'd be curious about your world and your setting as well, like what the magic system in your setting is like, or the closest equivalent thing you have to that.
Well, my magic system is kind of has. I already have a video about it, and thanks for mentioning it because I'll now link it somewhere either on this side or on the other. I'm not exactly sure where the iCard is gonna go. But in short, my magic system is kind of a hybrid between Harry Potter and Avatar: The Last Airbender, where only instead of using a wand like you would in Harry Potter, you use you use martial arts like an Avatar, and you have a lot more elements at your disposal. You have the classics, um, earth, fire, water, air, and then you also have some more modern elements, which are light, space, time, and life. And by life, I'm not talking about the metaphysical concept of souls and shit like that. I'm talking strictly biological processes. So stuff like blood flow, organ integrity, and and shit like that. So yeah, my magic system directly allows you to give people concussions without even touching them.
Nice. You talking about your life element kind of reminds me of my life and death element. My life element's very similar to yours, and then my death element is the souls and shit, as you put it. But also a little bit to do with the body as well. They're kind of they intermingle a little bit.
Yeah. Similarly, I noticed you have both light and darkness as separate elements. To me, it's kind of to me they're kind of the same because I see darkness as an absence of light. So if you can make a room brighter, you can also make the room dimmer by changing how much light there is in it. And I actually use that to not going to say to great effect, but quite often throughout the uh, throughout the initial book at least.
Cool. Yeah, a lot of my elements are intentionally opposites. The idea being that if if one god is less skilled than another god, then the one who is the opposite can kind of take over. I do this with the fire and ice element a lot. They're basically heat and coldness, and since the ice goddess is not able to perform her duties, the fire god more or less takes over for her.
Does water have an opposite in your
I
in your
put
system?
it in I put it in a triad with water, solid, and wind. So it's basically like solid, liquid, gas. So
Okay.
like if the water spirit were to disappear, the wind spirit could or the stone spirit could basically take over, um, in the sense that they can make, the stone spirit can make things less solid, and the wind spirit can make things more solid. Or did I say that backwards? I'm getting confused now.
Uh,
Either way, they can kind of push their elements closer toward a liquid.
okay. Um, and I'll say before we wrap up, is there any link or platform you want to shout out before we close out, or do you this is the opportunity. This is your opportunity to plug yourself. I'll put I'll put a whole bunch of I'll put a whole bunch of your links in the description below as well. But still, this is your opportunity to mention them.
Yeah, I'm at Kira of the Wind 1 on Twitter. I'm like Kira of the Wind with a bunch of underscores on Instagram. And then my website is offermccorkle.com.
Okay. Well, I'll say that was it. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me on your interview channel here.
And thank you to the audience for their attention. How much, regardless of how much of it they actually gave. Hopefully a lot. If you also enjoyed what it is you've seen and heard, then please also leave a like and maybe even share this video wherever you think others will like it as well. If you have anything you'd like to add to the content of this video or that you want to mention about it, the comment section awaits your input. And if you want to see when my next video gets released, well then please subscribe. And ideally also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. My own debut novel, Heir to the Empire: The Next Generation, is available at most major book retailers under a master link in the description below, right past mine and Erika's social media. You can also check those out, and I very much encourage you to. Um, until next time, I am Jonathan Taylor, and this has been The Heir's Lair.